The EV Michigan Road Trip, sponsored by LaFontaine Ford Grand Rapids.
More money is being spent by consumers and corporations on electric vehicles, especially right here in Michigan.
This prompted our crew to head out on a week-long EV road trip to see if it's actually convenient to drive an electric vehicle long distance, while also learning more about the state's infrastructure and economy and the environmental impacts of an EV. The team used a 2022 Ford Mustang Mach-E provided by LaFontaine Ford of Grand Rapids. The expected battery range for a Mach-E is around 250 miles, but as Sam will show you, that was impacted by the cold weather, the weight of the crew's equipment, and some other factors.
But before they hit the road, they had to start with the basics.
What is an EV? A battery electric vehicle, or BEV, is a car that's powered strictly by its batteries. No gas, just electricity. There are different types of BEVs, but all of them have charging ports. That's where you plug your car in and charge it the same way that you would charge, let's say, a cell phone battery. You can do this from home or on the road at a designated charging station. The travel range of an electric vehicle can vary based on the brand, but it can go anywhere from 75 miles to 400 miles on a single charge. These cars are known for making little noise and having a clean environmental footprint.
Now that we know the basics, is Michigan's infrastructure ready for EVs to take over the roadways?
That's what the team discovered as they hit the road on day one. They drove 226 miles from Grand Rapids to Mackinac City, stopping to charge once along the way. Finding chargers was pretty convenient for the team, with plenty of pre-planning.
Organizations like Consumers Energy and DTE are building hundreds of charging stations from rural communities to big cities.
On a federal level, the Department of Transportation gave Michigan drivers $110 million alone for electric vehicle charging. And Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office has given out more than $500,000 in grants for organizations creating EV infrastructure. State leaders and business owners are hoping to put Michigan at the forefront of electric vehicle innovation. And as the state that put the world on wheels, the task isn't anything new. But to make those changes and meet growing EV demands, the electric grid will need updating.
Our state's aging grid infrastructure, faced with more frequent and severe storm events, requires us to put grid reliability and safety at the top of our list of priorities.
Innovative companies like eCamion are overcoming limitations to our electric grid by building battery energy storage systems. Those systems work independently from the grid and rely on very little power, which makes them ideal for electric vehicles in rural communities. And Consumers Energy says drivers themselves can help offset the load by charging at night.
Interesting way to think about it. When you're sleeping, pretty much everything is off in your house. And so that's the perfect time to charge your electric vehicle. And so if we start at the home level and we think about that and build up, that's where the vast majority of charging happens, and it makes it really much easier for the grid to handle the additional load growth from electric vehicles.
While there are ways to lessen the burden on the electric grid, Consumers Energy and DTE Energy will both need to upgrade their systems to meet future demand.
This is an energy transition, and people will be using more electricity with electric vehicles. But as we look at that adoption, that's going to happen over 10 to 15 years. And that's very easy for us to handle with load growth. And it's also much easier for us to handle with existing infrastructure if we get people charging overnight.
Utility companies will also need to update the grid in case of massive power outages.
We're looking forward to our utility partners stepping up to the plate. With this electric and connected future is one that we are building toward, and we've been looking toward for a long time because we must. It's important for the future of our state and our response to the global climate change crisis. And so our utility partners, I think, have an opportunity to show leadership here in the state of Michigan, and we're looking forward to working with them to do so.
Another area the state needs to consider regarding infrastructure is the gas tax that funds massive road projects each year.
We have a lot of infrastructure investments that we need to continue to make in Michigan. And historically, those have been funded through gas taxes at the state level. Well, certainly, we want our mobility sector to transition to electrified vehicles. It's better for the planet. There are amazing jobs and companies to be created in this space, and Michigan's going to be a leader in it. So that means that we have to, take this opportunity to reimagine how we fund these infrastructure projects in a robust and ongoing way. Because the governor and I have a lot of roads that we need to fix. It's been 40 plus years of disinvestment, and we're ready to get that done. And so we're looking forward to working with this legislature to really be creative in terms of what's possible.
So there still is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to the state's infrastructure. But it's a different story for at-home charging. Electricians say they've been installing more and more at-home chargers. They're essential to driving an EV regularly. Now, some could require an update to the hardware in your home. The type of at-home charger you get installed will depend on how much you drive and how quickly you want to be able to charge.
If you drive maybe 15,000 miles a year, you might be spending with a typical vehicle around $1,500 in gasoline. Now, if you switch over to electricity and you charge off-peak, which is when our lowest time of use rate is, that 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. time frame, that's probably going to drop down to $700.
The physical plug that goes into your car can be anywhere from $0 to $500. And in terms of how much it could cost you to get the wiring done in your house, we have been quoted anywhere from $1,000 to up to $3,500.
If you only drove to church on Sunday, you could use that outlet and you could charge your vehicle efficiently. But if you're going to work every day, you would want something a lot bigger than that to charge your vehicle. You'd want a level 2 charger, and it'd be more like plugging in your oven. Okay. So, and it does go up from there too.
And that's a wrap on day 1 of our EV road trip, where we drove 226 miles, stopping to charge one time in Cadillac, Michigan, at a supercharger. We charged for 30 minutes, and it cost $9.35. The gas equivalent to that would have been $25.96. Now, we did have a little bit of a learning curve on our first day, and that's that you only want to get your charge to about 80% at a fast charger. After that, the charging slows down significantly, and your cost goes up significantly as well.
For day 2, Sam drove from Mackinac City down to Port Huron, making 2 stops to charge along the way.
Here's how one of those stops went in a very snowy Gaylord, Michigan.
All right, so we are at our next stop to charge from Mackinac City to Port Huron, and we wanted to walk you through the process with us because it kind of changes from time to time. This one specifically is Electrify America, and so it tells you and prompts you on the screen that you're going to plug in the car first. So you grab the carport. This is really similar to when you plug in for gas. Open up the little hatch here, put this thing down. For some reason, this has been the hardest part for me so far, is lining this up and pushing it in there. There we go. So that pops right in. We're gonna head on over to the screen, and it is connecting to our vehicle, it says. I'm gonna let that screen work its magic and see what it prompts me to do next, because we actually haven't used one of these chargers before. Connecting to vehicle. All right, I'm just gonna, oh, there we go, okay. So go ahead and put your card in, it says. So I'm gonna do that. Pushing the card in, processing payment. Clearly we are experiencing the snowy conditions that all of you wanted us to have to experience, which cracks me up. But we're putting our card in. Initiating charge is what the screen says now. Go ahead and get up close, Doug, and see what it says. So it says that it's 48 cents per kilowatt hour. Session fee so far is still at 0. Oh, continue, okay. And received by text. Okay, so we can put our phone number in so that it will tell us when it is done charging, submit. And thank you for choosing Electrify America. Okay, and the best part about this charging station is that it actually is at a Meijer. So we're gonna go inside, we're gonna walk around, stretch our legs a little bit. The other thing is actually just right across the street is a beat up. So if you wanted to go get lunch, you can go do that. And we've noticed that about a lot of these different charging locations is that they have different options, but it's just all about planning. We definitely didn't need to charge at this location, but it actually is the only fast charger that we saw between Mackinac City and Flint. So we wanted to stop at it so that we can speed things along.
One of the most common myths surrounding electric vehicles is that they're actually worse for our environment.
Meteorologist Samantha Jacques spoke with several experts to find out the truth.
Climate change is at the forefront of the electric vehicle industry, but are EVs really more environmentally friendly? We'll find out. As electric vehicles become more popular, there are concerns that they are not as environmentally friendly as promised. We spoke to several experts who have spent the last 10 years studying the environmental impacts of EVs, who say otherwise.
Driving the average electric vehicle produces about half the emissions of driving the average gasoline vehicle.
So then where does this misconception come from?
From a life cycle perspective, electric vehicles have a much lower impact than a gasoline vehicle.
Key term, life cycle. At the start of making an EV, they're actually worse for the environment due to the battery making process.
batteries is really the biggest difference between the two vehicles. So we look really closely at battery manufacturing. And it turns out that is more energy intensive, more pollution associated with making the batteries than making the gasoline vehicle.
So brand new, off the lot, EVs actually do have more emissions and pollutions associated with them. But it doesn't take long for that statistic to change.
But because when you're operating it, it's so much cleaner, over time, you're going to essentially the EV will be cleaner. A passenger vehicle EV, roughly, but within 2 years of driving that vehicle, you will make up for the difference in emissions. And then after that, you are in the clear.
This is because gas-powered vehicles are emitting pollutions every day you drive it, and the level of pollution associated with the extraction of oil and refining of gasoline.
And that's assuming the average grid, the average electricity grid. If you have solar on your roof, or you're powering it with renewable energy, you're choosing that through your utility provider, the more benefits you're going to get.
To take this one step further, EV batteries can be repurposed and recycled.
An electric vehicle reaches the end of its life after, say, 10 to 15 years. Before recycling, actually, the battery can be repurposed, and the battery can then be used for stationary storage. So this means that it could be used to support solar arrays. It can charge in the middle of the day and then release in the evening when there isn't as much electricity being generated. And then, as you mentioned, recycling, all of the batteries can be recycled no matter if they were repurposed or if they weren't.
In the United States, transportation produces the most greenhouse gas emissions of any sector at 29%, meaning that gas-powered vehicles are one of the leading causes of climate change because increased greenhouse gases lead to more pollution in the atmosphere, which traps the heat and can lead to increased severe weather events, putting vulnerable populations across Michigan at risk.
So, again, climate change is kind of it's a multiplier, right? So all of these chronic conditions that people have, like, asthma, diabetes, cardiac issues, heart problems, anytime you have more weather-related events, that compounds all of those chronic issues.
And a recent study out of Princeton University simulated EVs outnumbering regular cars by 2030. This could help to avoid 135,000 deaths by 2050. That's what was found in the study. With most health benefits concentrated in states with dense urban areas, this could potentially save $16,000 in air pollution costs in the state of Michigan.
When you think about air pollution out in general, it's a problem, but inside the vehicle, it's actually compounded. So vehicles recirculate air. So when you're at a stoplight, for instance, it's about 29 times higher air pollution inside your vehicle than when you're out on the road. If you're sitting in heavy traffic, it's 40 times higher inside your vehicle.
That's a wrap on day 2 of our EV road trip, where we drove 516 miles in total and had to stop to charge twice. The first charge was a supercharger, and it only took about 30 minutes. The second charge, on the other hand, was not a supercharger and took about an hour and 15 minutes for us to get back on the road. The gas equivalent, $65.79 compared to the EV charge for $47.38.
For their third day, Sam had a much shorter drive, traveling from Port Huron to Detroit.
In the city that put the world on wheels, there they learned about the job boom surrounding the entire EV industry.
The EV industry is creating a whole new job source across the state of Michigan. What those jobs are and what universities are doing to prepare their students. In the last 4 years, Governor Gretchen Whitmer says 35,000 new jobs have already been created just here in Michigan, from building electric cars themselves to making batteries and producing clean energy. One Holland business a part of this supply chain, LG Energy Solutions, makes lithium-ion batteries used by General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford. They've already hired 1,000 workers and are planning an expansion that will require 1,000 more.
It can be anything from human resources to an engineer or someone who college might not be their thing. We also have opportunities for people to get in on the floor and have on-the-job training. And it's really good pay and great benefits.
To help companies like LG Energy Solution, colleges and universities across the state are ramping up electric vehicle programs. They're preparing students for the future of the automotive industry as it grows.
EV Scholar program is built on the idea to really educate and inform and attract today's student into the opportunities that exist within this emerging electric vehicle or EV industry.
The EV Scholarship Program is for students at MSU, the University of Michigan, and Michigan Tech. Garth Batcher with MSU says it's essential not only for educating students, but keeping jobs in Michigan.
The electric vehicle market, or EV as we're going to call it, also has this tremendous opportunity for the state of Michigan from a talent attraction standpoint. How do we sustain the battery? How do we, renew the battery? How do we, when it's all said and done, how do we, dispose of the battery safely or remake it into something else? All of these things are part of the bigger picture of what the EV program or EV industry is about.
While many programs focus on EV creation and innovation, Ferris State University is making sure the future workforce is ready to meet the demand for mechanics and technicians.
There is a serious lack of technicians in the field that can service electric vehicles. And it's a more difficult problem than we originally anticipate, or we originally think, because we started out with a shortage of 77,000 technicians for conventional vehicles, and now as the technology changes, we're that much further behind to have people be able to service the electric vehicles.
Ferris also has programs for design and engineering. The culmination of these programs, keeping the workforce here in Michigan to boost the state economy.
It's going to be a movement that way that has a tremendous effect on everybody in the culture and in the population.
More companies looking to bring their electric vehicle business to Michigan. Battery plants have been proposed in Green Charter Township, Spring Lake, and Comstock Park. Here in Detroit, GM and Ford both building and expanding electric vehicle facilities in Metro Detroit. We are in the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn, getting a behind-the-scenes look at their award-winning F-150 Lightning truck. Let's get started.
So this is where the build starts. The body, the cab we called in the box, actually is built next door. So the body shop and the paint shop is shared between the ICE units and the BEV units. We have autonomous guided vehicles, and you will see that across the whole plant. And those get charged automatically. There's a charger underground. The way through the whole system, whenever they need charge, they get charged on their own.
Oh wow, so there's never a point in day that they're not rotating through, or is there a time frame?
They always rotate
Always
through.
rotating.
And if you have one offline for whatever reason, we have an offline charges as well. You can see the team leader is using that one right there. So that's why we call it quality control for our joints, how we can build in quality in station. If I'm not achieving my joints the proper torque, if I'm not scanning the proper part, the vehicle will not go anywhere. It will stop till somebody physically makes sure the proper torque, the proper part, the proper scan is in that station from a quality control.
Okay.
One thing you will notice here is really the difference the minute you step into this plant compared to the other plant is really the environment, the noise level.
Yeah.
The other plant, because the traditional conveyors and the chain and all the movement, it's really loud. And you won't be able to hear me. Where here is just nice and quiet. I don't have those conveyors, right, because of the AGV, nice and quiet. Electric truck, there's no engine, nice and quiet. It's it's just a different environment compared to the traditional plant. This whole thing right here right in the middle of the frame rail is all high voltage battery.
Okay.
And it's built also, it's assembled by another Ford site, Rosenville. And you have all-wheel drive, you get electronic motors, primary drive, secondary drive, it's all electrical. And anything with orange is an indication of your high voltage wiring, from indication for our team members. Now you can see the front suspension, the rear suspension is upside down. So this is where we have the two robots that they're gonna pick it up and flip it 180 degree, where you have a third robot gonna be able to pick up the high voltage battery and get it right under it. So you'll be able to see that. And this is one of the automated stations where everything has to synchronize together between your robotic system, between your frame AGV, between the high voltage battery AGV, between the empty and the full, so they all have to work together to make it happen.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see that. This is where that we said the upper body meets the underbody, we call the body decking area. So we saw the chassis, did all the quality checks. Now it's coming in position where your overhead body will be coming shortly to meet it, and that's what we call the body decking area.
I would imagine that with using the computer and the technology, that's very rare that you find something on there that isn't supposed to be?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Exactly 100%.
Great.
And we have that, and we also have our team members. They also have team members, so they're not going away. So they also check in the exterior of the vehicle, make sure everything looks good as well.
Okay.
So this is our exterior inspection. So outside of the building, the vehicle goes through the normal quality checks and the drive and all that, but we have a high-level charging station that every vehicle gets in there, get charged. Oh, it's about 70%, so by the time you get to the dealership, you have a vehicle charged with at least a good amount of charge level.
And that's a wrap on day 3 of our EV road trip. We didn't travel very far, and it only cost us about $10 in total to charge in just a little over 20 minutes.
Finally, the team drove back from Detroit here home to Grand Rapids.
They've covered a lot, and here's a look at their final thoughts.
Overall, it was a breeze driving this car this week with well-planned stops and designated times to charge. But there certainly is room for improvement overall. We started in Grand Rapids, went north to Mackinac City, traveled southeast to Port Huron, made it to the Motor City, and now we're back in Grand Rapids. That's a grand total of 755 miles with 12 and a half hours of driving. We spent an additional 2 hours and 40 minutes charging. This brought us to our grand total of $58.08. We learned a lot about charging along the way, but we made sure that we planned out our routes and only stopped in cities that had chargers available. Fast chargers took us to 80% and our overnight chargers took us to 100%. For most drivers, this is what day-to-day charging would look like. Consumers Energy says it would only cost you $40 a month in electricity if you charge in off-peak hours from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
If you drive maybe 15,000 miles a year, you might be spending with a typical vehicle around $1,500 in gasoline. Now, if you switch over to electricity and you charge off-peak, which is when our lowest time of use rate is, that 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. time frame, that's probably going to drop down to $700.
Job and economic growth.
It can be anything from human resources to an engineer or someone who college might not be their thing.
And infrastructure.
And so if we start at the home level, that's where the vast majority of charging happens, and it makes it really much easier for the grid to handle the additional load growth.
But in the same vein, there also needs to be major upgrades to our electrical grid.
We're looking forward to our utility partners stepping up to the plate.
You know, how do we sustain the battery? How do we, renew the battery? How do we, when it's all said and done, how do we, dispose of the battery safely?
The batteries themselves also will need longer range.
The heater, the headlights, every electrical load that you put on the system will eventually have some, even if it's small, effect on the battery.
And lawmakers will have to find new ways to fund road projects without the gas tax.
So that means that we have to, take this opportunity to reimagine how we fund these infrastructure projects.
But those issues are already being worked on by scientists, businesses, and state leaders, like creating roads that could charge your car while you drive.
And those get charged automatically. There's a charger underground, the way through the whole system. Whenever they need charge, they get charged on their own.
And improving how to repurpose EV batteries themselves.
All of the batteries can be recycled, no matter if they were repurposed or if they weren't.
State lawmakers say Michigan put the world on wheels, and now we have to be the first to electrify the nation.
We are the #1 state for clean energy sector job growth and the #2 state for business development and business growth.
Overall, if you often find yourself on longer road trips, a hybrid or gas vehicle will be more efficient. But if you want a sustainable car to take you to and from work every day, EVs are a great option. And the price is comparable to an ICE car, especially with the tax incentives available right now.
This road trip sparked a lot of viewer questions.
And Sam has some of those answers.
One of the biggest worries people have about getting an electric vehicle is range anxiety. We were able to avoid this by planning out our routes and stops. We did so by using different apps such as ChargePoint, PlugShare, Apple, and Google Maps. The apps can show you what type of chargers are available. For example, a level 1 charger is the slowest type and a level 4 charger is the fastest. We found that level 4 chargers cost more per kilowatt hour, but they get the job done quicker, spending less time charging. Another big question we saw is the cost of a new EV in comparison to a new gas-powered vehicle. The cost of a Ford Mach-E starts at $42,000. A Nissan Leaf starts at about $28,000, and a Tesla Model 3 starts at about $46,000. The average cost of a new gas-powered vehicle, $49,000. So the price is comparable, especially when you factor in the incentives available to an EV driver.
That's a wrap on our EV Michigan road trip.
If you'd like to learn more, you can find it all on our website, 13onyourside.com.
The EV Michigan road trip, sponsored by LaFontaine Ford Grand Rapids.